It was a Tuesday. Miriam was on her third episode of a Czech romantic comedy from 1982, eating popcorn she had made herself, in an apartment she had furnished herself, in a city she had chosen herself. Well, sort of.
Hey, this is hilarious.
There were no subtitles. She hadn't noticed. At what point does that happen? Not fluency, not mastery, just this. The moment you stop translating and start understanding. Because if you've ever lived somewhere that doesn't speak your language, you've probably asked yourself some version of the same question. How long until I'm not lost anymore?
I was watching something.
You were, and without subtitles.
I know. Without subtitles. I didn't notice I was watching a movie without subtitles.
To be clear, she was having a perfectly good evening.
There's this film, Sletebo Mě baví svět, which is just lovely. You know, it's not trying to be anything. It's just people being people. Just people being people in a city that looks a lot like this one. I've watched it twice now. The first time I put the subtitles on, standard procedure. And tonight I sat down, I pressed play, I ate my popcorn, and I laughed at things. And then a voice from apparently nowhere, informed me that there were no subtitles on. Which I knew. I just hadn't registered it. And that's not fluency. I want to be clear about that I'm not fluent. I sound like an impression of someone who speaks Czech. But something is settling. Some part of my brain just stopped fighting it and just started listening. I find that mildly alarming.
The city moves past. She knows this route. This was not an isolated incident. 3 days earlier, on the number 6 tram, an old woman had asked Miriam if the seat beside her was taken and complained about how there is always construction and they keep detouring the routes. Miriam said no and yes, that is true, in Czech, and then looked out the window again. She did not make a thing of it, which was itself a kind of thing that she understood.
You know what I used to do when someone spoke to me in Czech? You know, there was this whole process, this kind of internal scramble, kind of like opening a lot of drawers very quickly, and then one of them are empty, and then one of it has something you need, but it's at the back. And then I would produce something, usually grammatically incorrect, usually apologetic in tone. You know, and the other person, they would just smile, if that. You know, in that particular way that means that we'll get through this together. We'll just simply ignore you. You know, the woman on the tram, she didn't smile in that particular way. She just nodded and looked at her phone, which could mean that she totally understood me or she has no idea what I said. But I think that that's the best compliment that maybe I've received since I've moved here.
Miriam had, without formally deciding to, developed opinions. A preferred flower shop on Stefanikova, a route home that made no geographical sense but felt correct, a bench at Luzanki Park that she thought of, privately, as hers. She had not moved to Brno to become someone with a bench, and yet, there she was.
At what point does Miriam, and perhaps you, wherever you have landed, stop needing the subtitles? Not just on the screen, but in the street, in the shop, in the conversation you are only half following but somehow understand.
No, I've been thinking about what it means, but I understand those films now. Not totally, but not just the words, but the rhythm of them and the humor, the way nobody in a Czech comedy is ever quite as cynical as they're pretending to be. There's always something tender underneath. And then someone who wants something simple. There's someone who wants something simple. And, they keep almost getting it. I recognized that before I had the language for it, which I suppose is its own kind of fluency. I don't know when I learned any of this. I was just busy doing other things, surviving mostly, getting from one week of my life to the next. And then one Tuesday evening, I looked around and I was laughing at a joke in a language that wasn't even mine. I genuinely don't know when it happened, but I've been here for a bit over 2 years now. And somewhere between month 16 and month 19, I stopped reading the bottom of the screen and just started watching the faces. Probably because nobody notices turning the subtitles off while it's happening. But I'm turning them back on now, just in case.
She watched 2 more episodes after that.